Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Gaza conflict escalates with international condemnation and U.S.-Israeli tensions. Fresh peace talks planned for Wednesday, but expectations are low. A fragile ceasefire remains in Suweida despite sectarian violence. Allegations of migrant torture in El Salvador cause international outcry. The UK is imposing sanctions on people-smuggling networks. 2 Italian nationals are held in Florida's Alligator Alcatraz. Laos smugglers are arrested for illegal cough syrup distribution. Thai-US relations are being re-evaluated. A concert cancellation reveals key divisions regarding Gergiev's involvement. Cambodia is accused of mining along its border after soldier injuries. Extreme weather is driving up global food prices. A Wells Fargo banker is prevented from leaving China. Thailand and the US are nearing a trade deal. Legal battles continue at Harvard and Columbia universities. Recent declassification by Tulsi Gabbard reignites controversy about Russian interference. Gaza conflict intensifies amidst international condemnation and shifting U.S.-Israeli relations. The ongoing conflict in Gaza is escalating, marked by increased Israeli military operations and growing international concern over civilian casualties and the humanitarian crisis. The World Health Organization, WHO, reports that Israeli attacks on Gaza's central Deir al-Balah, including a destroyed warehouse and detention of staff, have severely compromised its operations, with 33 people, including children, dying from malnutrition. Simultaneously, the UK and 27 other nations have condemned Israel's aid delivery model, labeling it drip feeding, and causing inhumane killing of civilians seeking assistance. Amidst this, the United States is navigating a complex dynamic with Israel. President Donald Trump was reportedly caught off guard by Israeli actions, including a bombing of a Catholic church in Gaza and strikes on government buildings in Syria, prompting immediate phone calls to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to rectify the situations. This highlights a growing tension between the two leaders despite a previously good working relationship. The conflict's impact is devastating, with reports of over 1,000 people killed while seeking humanitarian aid in Gaza since May. The UN Secretary General expressed appallment at the deteriorating conditions and the collapse of vital lifelines. The U.S. administration is working to facilitate a ceasefire and hostage release, but negotiations with Hamas are stalled, with Hamas stating they are exerting all our efforts to reach an agreement. The situation is further complicated by the international community's criticism of Israel's aid delivery system, which has led to a significant increase in humanitarian aid distribution. Despite this, the conflict continues to claim lives, with President Trump expressing his appallment at the escalating violence and urging for an end to the killing. The U.S. administration is emphasizing its efforts to ensure aid reaches Gaza, while simultaneously dealing with the complex political and diplomatic challenges surrounding the conflict. The dynamic between the U.S. and Israel, marked by moments of surprise and disagreement, underscores the difficulties in achieving a resolution to the crisis. Fresh peace talks scheduled for Wednesday amidst continued conflict and diminished expectations. Despite ongoing hostilities and a lack of significant progress, Ukraine and Russia are set to hold fresh peace talks in Istanbul on Wednesday, marking a renewed attempt to de-escalate the protracted conflict. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced the upcoming discussions, prioritizing the release of detained individuals, including abducted children, the cessation of hostilities, and the preparation for a leaders' meeting. Rustem Umerov, Ukraine's current Secretary of the Security Council, will lead the Ukrainian delegation. However, Russia remains skeptical, dismissing expectations of miraculous breakthroughs, and stating that a considerable amount of work remains before any substantive talks can occur. The Kremlin, through spokesman Dmitry Peskov, confirmed Russia's hope that discussions would take place this week, though no firm date was announced. This follows previous failed rounds of negotiations in Istanbul, where disagreements persisted regarding the terms of a ceasefire. The conflict continues to intensify, with both sides exchanging drone and missile attacks. Recent developments include Russia's capture of the village of Novotoretskoye in the Donetsk region, signaling a stepped-up offensive. Simultaneously, Ukraine has intercepted numerous drones launched by Russia. Tragically, a 10-year-old boy was killed in Kramatorsk due to a Russian drone strike, highlighting the continued vulnerability of civilian populations. Elsewhere, a Russian attack resulted in the death of a man in Russia's Belgorod region, and a Ukrainian drone strike killed 3 people and wounded others in the Russian-occupied Kherson region. These attacks underscore the escalating nature of the conflict and the disruption it's causing across borders. The international community, particularly the United States, continues to exert pressure on both sides to reach a negotiated settlement, with Washington pledging continued military support to Ukraine. Despite these efforts, the path towards a peaceful resolution remains challenging, with deep-seated mistrust and continued military action dominating the landscape. The upcoming talks represent a crucial, albeit uncertain, step in a conflict that has spanned over 3 years. Fragile ceasefire holds in Suweida amidst sectarian violence. A fragile ceasefire is currently in effect within Syria's battle-scarred Suweida province, following a week of intense sectarian clashes between Druze religious community members and Bedouin tribal militias. The BBC News team, approaching Suweida city, reported significant danger from Druze snipers operating along the road, encountering deserted Druze villages under government control and widespread destruction, including burnt-out businesses and shell-strewn streets. Syrian army soldiers were present, visibly wary and maintaining a watchful presence. The government deployed troops 4 days prior to enforce the ceasefire, aiming to end the violence that has resulted in over 1,000 fatalities. However, the situation remains precarious, with hundreds of armed Bedouin fighters massed along the roadside, expressing readiness to resume fighting if the agreement collapses. These Bedouin fighters demand the release of injured comrades still held within the city, viewing the situation as a hostage crisis. Druze factions accuse the Syrian government of siding with the Bedouin and committing abuses, including summary executions. The BBC witnessed horrific scenes within Suweida, including burned-out homes and the bodies of children. The Syrian Red Crescent has been facilitating the evacuation of injured individuals from Suweida to Dira, where medical personnel are struggling with a severe shortage of supplies and overwhelmed by the influx of casualties. One injured soldier, Amidst, described the devastating fighting, highlighting the impact of rocket-propelled grenades and the widespread destruction. Riem Bermawi, a Syrian Red Crescent coordinator, characterized the situation as catastrophic, citing the urgent need for more surgeries and medical assistance. Due to sniper activity, further medical evacuations were deemed too dangerous, hindering the organization's ability to provide immediate aid. The ongoing conflict and the precarious nature of the ceasefire continue to inflict immense suffering on the civilian population of Suweida. El Salvador allegations of migrant torture spark international outcry. Recent reports have emerged alleging systematic human rights abuses against migrants held in El Salvador's Secot prison, prompting a strong response from Venezuela and raising concerns globally. Over 250 Venezuelan migrants were recently repatriated to near Caracas following a 4-month detention period initiated by their deportation from the United States. Venezuelan authorities, led by Attorney General Tarek William Saab, have announced a formal investigation into the claims of torture, detailing accounts of sexual abuse, daily beatings, and the provision of inadequate, rotten food within the prison. Supporting these accusations, Saab presented photographic evidence and testimonies depicting detainees exhibiting injuries, including bruising and missing teeth. However, these claims remain unverified by independent sources, including the BBC. The Venezuelan government is actively pursuing legal action against El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, Justice Minister Gustavo Villatoro, and head of prisons Osiris Luna Meza. Venezuela's investigation mirrors a prior ICC investigation targeting the nation itself, alleging similar abuses and the denial of legal representation to prisoners. Saab has issued a call for the International Criminal Court, the UN Human Rights Council, and other relevant bodies throughout the Americas to conduct their own investigations. This situation highlights a growing international concern regarding the treatment of migrants and asylum seekers, particularly those detained in countries like El Salvador. The allegations represent a serious breach of human rights and could have significant legal and diplomatic ramifications. The pursuit of justice and accountability is now a key priority for the Venezuelan government and potentially other international organizations. UK to implement sanctions targeting people-smuggling networks. The UK government is set to introduce a series of sanctions targeting individuals and entities involved in the trafficking of migrants across the English Channel via small boats. These measures, scheduled for unveiling on Wednesday, represent a central component of the government's strategy to dismantle criminal networks responsible for these perilous journeys. The initial sanctions will target gang leaders, corrupt officials, police officers, fake passport dealers, and companies supplying the small boats used in the operation. Approximately 24 individuals currently implicated in facilitating the trade or profiting from it are expected to be named. However, experts caution that the impact of these sanctions may be limited, suggesting that simply targeting individuals will likely only have a marginal effect on the overall industry. Dr. Madeleine Sumption, deputy chair of the Migration Advisory Committee, stated she would be surprised if the sanctions were a game changer for the industry as a whole. She emphasized the vast number of people involved and the dependence on international cooperation. The sanctions will extend beyond the immediate traffickers to include financial middlemen utilizing hawala networks, an informal system for money transfers frequently exploited by smugglers. Furthermore, future sanctions packages are planned to encompass corrupt public officials and police officers, signaling a broader approach to disrupting the networks. The government led by Sir Keir Starmer is committed to smashing these gangs and tackling illegal migration at its source is a key election pledge. Concerns have been raised about the enforceability of these sanctions given the international nature of the smuggling operations. Recent data indicates a significant increase in small boat crossings, with over 20,000 people attempting the journey in the first 6 months of 2024, a nearly 50% rise compared to the previous year. Foreign Secretary David Lammy described the sanctions as the first of its kind anywhere on the planet, asserting they are a crucial step towards ending the impunity enjoyed by criminal gangs preying on vulnerable individuals. The government anticipates that other nations will follow suit, implementing similar measures to combat this growing problem. 2 Italian nationals detained in Florida's Alligator Alcatraz facility. 2 Italian nationals, Fernando Eduardo Artis and Gaetano Marabella Costa, are currently being held at the ICE detention center known as Alligator Alcatraz in Florida, sparking international concern and calls for intervention. Both men were detained on immigration violations, with Artis apprehended while attempting to leave the country with his family and Costa detained following a prior arrest related to a criminal history. Fernando Eduardo Artis, a dual Italian-Argentinian citizen who had resided legally in the U.S. under the visa waiver program since 2018, was stopped on June 25 while driving with his family. He had an outstanding warrant for failing to appear in court due to a driving violation, leading to his detention and transfer to the facility. His daughter, Carla Artis, describes the situation as a concentration camp, highlighting the lack of legal representation and information provided to her father. The family's fundraising efforts aim to secure an attorney to assist in his release and repatriation, emphasizing his desire to self-deport with the funds required for his travel. Gaetano Marabella Costa's case is further complicated by a prior criminal history, including arrest for domestic violence, possession of prescription drugs, and marijuana possession. He was detained upon his release from a 6-month jail sentence and is reportedly held in a severely overcrowded and inhumane environment, described as a chicken coop, with open bathrooms and limited access to legal counsel. His mother, Rosanna Marabella Costa, recounts his arrest with shackles on his feet and hands, noting his ability to communicate via phone as the only positive aspect of his situation. Both men's detentions have drawn criticism from the Italian government, particularly from former Speaker of the House Laura Boldrini, who demands action from Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. The Italian consulate in Miami confirms their engagement with the Foreign Ministry, which is in contact with the families. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security maintains that both individuals are being treated as criminal illegal aliens and emphasizes the consequences for violating immigration laws. The situation underscores ongoing tensions regarding immigration enforcement and the conditions of detention within ICE facilities. Lao smugglers arrested with illegal cough syrup. Customs officials at the Tai Lao Friendship Bridge in Muang District apprehended 2 Lao nationals, identified as Bin Lee and Japhet, both aged 35, attempting to smuggle 8,000 bottles of unapproved cough syrup out of Thailand. The incident occurred on Monday at the Mukdahan border checkpoint. A covered pickup truck was stopped for inspection, revealing 40 green sacks filled with boxes containing the illicit medication. Crucially, the cough syrup lacked Food and Drug Administration, FDA approval, and was accompanied by no supporting documentation. Following the initial arrest, the 2 suspects were detained for questioning, and the entire shipment of cough syrup was impounded. Authorities are currently conducting tests on samples of the medication to determine if any fall under Thailand's Narcotics Act. If controlled substances are discovered, additional charges will be levied against Bin Lee and Japhet. The investigation is expanding to trace the supply network within Laos and identify any local collaborators involved in the operation. Investigators are actively seeking links to potential money laundering schemes or other transnational criminal organizations that may have facilitated the smuggling operation. The focus is on disrupting the entire chain of distribution. The seizure highlights ongoing concerns about the illegal trade of pharmaceuticals across borders. The lack of proper authorization and documentation for the cough syrup represents a significant regulatory breach. The authorities' intention to investigate potential links to organized crime underscores the seriousness with which they are treating the case. The investigation's scope is broadening to encompass the entire network involved in the illicit trade. The case is a reminder of the challenges faced by border control agencies in combating cross-border smuggling activities and safeguarding public health. Recalibrating Thai-U.S. ties. Once again, Thailand is currently navigating a critical renegotiation of its trade relationship with the United States, primarily driven by concerns over a proposed 36% tariff on exported goods, set to take effect after August 1st. This tariff is a direct response to Thailand's substantial trade surplus of $43 billion with the U.S. The negotiations, led by Finance Minister Pakai Chunhavajira, aim to address this imbalance and secure favorable terms for Thai exports. A key element of the discussions involves the U.S. demanding a local content requirement of up to 80% for products sold within the American market, aiming to curb transshipment practices. Thailand is responding by offering to purchase natural gas and shale oil from the U.S. at lower global prices, alongside exploring investments in the U.S. energy sector. This reflects a strategic shift in seeking reciprocal benefits. The U.S. is also pushing for greater market access for Thai agricultural products, particularly pork and offal, while acknowledging Thailand's existing free trade agreements. However, many of Thailand's exports under these agreements remain uncompetitive. The situation is complicated by the potential for a rise in transshipment tariffs, impacting manufacturers with low local content, such as Vietnam. Beyond trade, the U.S. seeks to redefine the strategic partnership, acknowledging Thailand's long-standing role in the Cobra Gold military exercises, which has continued for 44 consecutive years. Despite this, Thailand feels it has not received commensurate benefits, including technological sharing and access to strategic platforms. Concerns regarding Thailand's relationship with China, highlighted by the procurement of Swedish Gripen jets instead of US F-35s, further fuel these anxieties. The U.S. has suspended its international military education and training program for Thailand, a critical link in the bilateral relationship. Moving forward, Thailand is advocating for greater autonomy and leadership in security engagements, demanding increased technological sharing and access to U.S. strategic platforms, such as space technology and cyber surveillance. The renegotiations represent a significant opportunity for Thailand to reshape its strategic alignment with the U.S., emphasizing national interests and security autonomy. The U.S. is seeking to maintain stability, while Thailand seeks to redefine its role within the broader regional security landscape. Concert cancellation highlights key divisions over Gergiev's presence. To a concert featuring Russian conductor Valery Gergiev, a close ally of President Putin, has been cancelled by the organizers of the Estate d'Ari festival in Italy. The decision follows sustained criticism from Kremlin critics and human rights groups regarding Gergiev's continued support for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Initially scheduled for a performance at the Royal Palace of Caserta on July 27th, the concert involved Gergiev leading an Italian orchestra and soloists from St. Petersburg's Mariinsky Theater. Since February 2022, Gergiev has been barred from performing on Western stages, refusing to publicly condemn the invasion. Italian Culture Minister Alessandro Giuli deemed the cancellation common sense, asserting it protected the values of the free world. The Royal Palace of Caserta provided no specific reason for the cancellation. Pressure to cancel the concert intensified with a direct appeal from Ukraine, which labeled Gergiev Putin's mouthpiece, and urged organizers to prevent his welcome as long as Russian forces continued atrocities. Yulia Navalnaya, the widow of Alexei Navalny, praised the decision as good news, emphasizing that no artist supporting the current Russian dictatorship should be welcomed in Europe. Moscow's ambassador to Italy characterized the cancellation as a scandalous situation and a component of a policy of canceling Russian culture. Prior to the invasion, Gergiev regularly performed at prominent Western venues, including Milan's La Scala, the Munich Philharmonic Orchestra, and New York's Carnegie Hall. Following the invasion, these institutions severed ties with him. The cancellation underscores the ongoing international debate surrounding cultural engagement with individuals linked to the Russian government, and the broader implications of sanctions and condemnation of the conflict in Ukraine. The situation highlights a significant division between those advocating for continued cultural exchange and those demanding a complete boycott of Russia. Cambodia, accused of mining border following soldier injuries at Thailand, has strongly condemned Cambodia's alleged placement of anti-personnel mines near the Thai-Cambodian border, following an explosion that injured 3 Thai soldiers. The incident, involving newly planted PMN-2 mines, is being viewed as a violation of international law and Thai sovereignty, specifically the Ottawa Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention, which both countries ratified in 1997 and 1998. following the discovery of 2 additional mines near Chongbuk in Ubon Ratchathani, just 30 centimeters from the site of the initial explosion. The Serenity Task Force safely defused and removed them. Army spokesman Maj Gen Wintai Suveri emphasized the deliberate nature of the placement, pointing to signs of recent digging. The Thai government is preparing a formal written protest to the president of the meeting of states parties to the Ottawa Convention, currently held by Japan, seeking accountability. The Foreign Affairs Ministry will also report the incident to Cambodia in writing. Thailand is actively seeking support from key international partners, including Japan and Norway, which have a stake in demining efforts. Deputy Prime Minister and Interior Minister Phumtham Wechai announced increased security protocols, including briefings for military attachés and representatives from foreign armed forces. He stated that if further evidence emerges, the Thai charge d'affaires in Cambodia could be recalled. Cambodia has denied laying the mines, asserting it possesses clear evidence to the contrary. However, Thailand maintains the placement constitutes a blatant violation of international law. The situation is particularly sensitive concerning the Tamuantam Temple in Surin, a popular tourist site, where immediate measures are being implemented to prevent escalation, including positioning crowd control units. The Thai government's response underscores the seriousness of the breach and the potential for further repercussions, highlighting the ongoing tensions along the border and the importance of upholding international agreements regarding landmine usage. The situation is being closely monitored by both nations and the international community. Extreme weather drives global food price increases, new study reveals. A recently published study highlights the significant impact of climate change-induced extreme weather on global food prices, revealing a worrying trend of escalating costs across numerous agricultural products. The research, led by Maximilian Kotz, demonstrates how unprecedented weather events including extreme heat, drought, and heavy precipitation are disrupting supply chains and driving up prices worldwide. The study analyzed 16 examples across 18 countries between 2022 and 2024, showcasing price spikes directly linked to these weather anomalies. Notable examples include an 80% increase in vegetable prices in California and Arizona following a summer of extreme heat and water shortages, a 70% rise in cabbage prices in South Korea due to a heat wave, and a 50% surge in olive oil prices across Europe stemming from a prolonged drought. Mexico experienced a 20% price increase in fruits and vegetables due to a severe drought, while Japan saw a 48% rise in rice prices linked to a record-breaking heat wave. The impact extended to cocoa production, with a devastating 280% price increase in Ghana and Ivory Coast due to a 4 degrees Celsius hotter heat wave exacerbated by climate change. This surge directly impacted global cocoa prices. The study underscores the potential for these price increases to disproportionately affect low-income households, potentially leading to reduced consumption of nutritious foods and associated health risks like malnutrition and type 2 diabetes. Furthermore, the rising food costs contribute to broader inflationary pressures, increasing the risk of political instability and social unrest. Researchers emphasize that this trend is expected to continue until global net zero emissions targets are achieved. The findings align with growing literature on climate change's impact on agriculture and coincide with the upcoming UN Food Systems Summit Stocktake Conference in Ethiopia, where world leaders will address these critical challenges. Tim Benton, a professor at the University of Leeds, notes the exacerbating effects of global trade tensions and conflict, predicting a future characterized by increased market volatility and a persistent cost of living crisis, highlighting the urgency of tackling climate change. The study serves as a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of the global food system and the profound consequences of inaction. Wells Fargo banker blocked from leaving China, raising travel concerns. To a Wells Fargo banker, Chen Yu Mao has been prevented from leaving China due to a criminal investigation, prompting heightened concerns among Western executives regarding travel risks to the world's second largest economy. Chinese economies, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, confirmed the exit ban, stating it's part of an ongoing judicial case involving Ms. Mao. The specifics of the case and her connection to it remain undisclosed. Ms. Mao, who has worked for Wells Fargo since 2012 and currently leads the bank's international factoring business, is based in Atlanta and born in Shanghai. Wells Fargo has suspended all travel to China and is actively working to facilitate her return to the United States. This incident follows a similar situation involving a Commerce Department employee who was also blocked from leaving China after failing to disclose his government employment on his visa application. The State Department currently maintains a Level 2 travel advisory for China, urging Americans to exercise increased caution due to arbitrary enforcement of local laws and potential exit bans. The situation is generating jittery feelings within C-suites and boards of directors, according to Sam Steen, president of the U.S.-China Business Council. Western companies are increasingly wary of executive travel to China due to a lack of transparency surrounding exit bans. Stein emphasized the need for China to provide clearer explanations for such restrictions. Global Guardian CEO Dale Buckner advises U.S. companies to rigorously vet employees, particularly those with government ties, dual nationality, or involvement in sensitive industries, before allowing travel to China. He cautions that individuals failing to disclose military or government connections are vulnerable to exit bans, which China often employs to gain leverage during negotiations or acquire intellectual property. Gu Jiakun, a spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Finance, reiterated the importance of adhering to Chinese law for both citizens and foreigners while in the country, emphasizing continued welcomes for international visitors and businesses. The overall takeaway is a significant increase in risk perception associated with travel to China, demanding heightened due diligence and strategic risk management by Western companies. Thailand's near trade deal with U.S. to lower import tariffs to Thailand is on the verge of finalizing a trade agreement with the United States, aiming to reduce a threatened 36% tariff on its exports. Finance Minister Pichai Chunhavajira anticipates the negotiations will conclude within days, following the submission of final details to U.S. trade officials. The deal is expected to be announced before the August 1st tariff implementation date. Negotiations have progressed over 90% completion, with remaining elements involving clarifications requested by the U.S. side. To incentivize the agreement, Thailand has sweetened its offers, including increased purchases of U.S. goods such as agricultural products, liquefied natural gas, and Boeing aircraft. Furthermore, Thailand is pledging investments, notably in the Trump-backed Alaska gas project. The country's trade surplus, currently at $46 billion, is expected to decrease substantially, potentially reaching a balanced trade within 5 years. The proposed tariff reduction aligns with existing rates applied to exports to Vietnam, 20%, and Indonesia, 19%. Thailand's trade surplus has lagged behind regional peers, and a favorable trade deal is seen as crucial for economic growth, particularly given high household debt and weak domestic consumption. The U.S. Thailand's largest export market, accounting for 18% of total shipments in 2024, is requesting specific policy adjustments and issue handling protocols. The Thai Chamber of Commerce estimates the new offers could reduce the trade surplus by 70% within 3 years. Political uncertainty, including recent court suspensions related to a border dispute with Cambodia, has also been a factor. Despite these challenges, Thailand's exports have risen by 15% in the first 5 months of the year, largely due to a 90-day tariff pause facilitating negotiations. The U.S. demands are focused on policy specifics, and Thailand is currently reviewing its ability to meet these expectations, signifying a complex and potentially pivotal trade relationship. Harvard and Columbia legal battles intensify amidst administration disputes. A multifaceted legal battle is unfolding between the Trump administration and several prominent universities, primarily Harvard and Columbia, centered around federal funding and accusations of failing to adequately address anti-Semitism on campus. The core dispute revolves around the administration's assertion that universities are obligated to uphold specific standards regarding viewpoint diversity and the handling of anti-Semitism, triggering the suspension of substantial research grants. The legal challenges primarily focus on the administration's interpretation of executive orders concerning anti-Semitism, leading to the termination of over $2.4 billion in federal awards to Harvard, and the initiation of a similar review process targeting Columbia University. Key figures involved include President Donald Trump, White House policy strategists, university presidents, Asa Garber at Harvard, Bollinger at Columbia, and legal teams representing both sides. Harvard's legal strategy centers on demonstrating that its research projects, particularly those related to cancer prevention and biological threat research, are unrelated to anti-Semitism and crucial to national security. Columbia University is similarly defending its research initiatives, highlighting their contributions to scientific advancement. The administration's legal pressure extends beyond funding suspensions. Department of Homeland Security investigations have targeted Columbia's student visitor and exchange program, demanding detailed records and raising concerns about immigration compliance. Harvard has also experienced the removal of websites supporting its minority and LGBTQ student centers, a move welcomed by the White House. Throughout the ongoing disputes, Trump has repeatedly criticized the universities, framing the legal battles as a necessary response to perceived Trump-hating judicial decisions. He has expressed confidence in imminent settlements with both Harvard and Columbia, anticipating significant financial payouts. The administration intends to appeal any unfavorable rulings and has vowed to continue pressuring universities to align with its priorities. The legal battles are expected to continue, with potential implications for academic research and the allocation of federal funding. Tulsi Gabbard's recent declassification fuels ongoing controversy regarding Russian interference in the 2016 election. Recent actions by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, including the declassification and release of intelligence documents, have reignited a protracted controversy surrounding the extent of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. These efforts, characterized as attempts to cook the books and rewrite history, directly contradict established findings from multiple intelligence assessments and congressional investigations. The core of the dispute centers on the January 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment, which concluded that Russia, under President Vladimir Putin, launched an influence and hacking campaign aimed at helping Donald Trump defeat Hillary Clinton. This assessment, initially met with bipartisan support, has been repeatedly challenged by individuals within the Trump administration, most notably Gabbard, who alleges a treasonous conspiracy by Obama-era officials. Gabbard's recent release of documents focuses on claims that the intelligence assessment relied heavily on the Christopher Steele dossier, a controversial British intelligence report alleging coordination between the Russian government and individuals associated with the Trump campaign. Critics argue that the dossier's unverified nature and lack of dissemination as serialized intelligence reporting should have precluded its inclusion in the assessment. However, multiple investigations, including a 2020 bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee review, reached a unanimous conclusion that Putin orchestrated a deliberate effort to interfere in the election to benefit Trump. This conclusion was supported by interviews with intelligence analysts involved in drafting the assessment, who emphasized that the Steele dossier was not a factor in the analysis itself. Furthermore, the efforts to discredit the original assessment are being viewed as a systematic attempt to undermine public trust in intelligence agencies. Several officials, including former CIA Director John Ratcliffe, have echoed Gabbard's criticisms, while Senate Intelligence Committee Chair Mark Warner has condemned the attempts to cook the books. The controversy extends to allegations of a whistleblower within the Office of Director of National Intelligence who claims to have been sidelined during the development of the January 2017 assessment. Despite these challenges, the prevailing consensus remains that Russia engaged in a coordinated effort to influence the 2016 election outcome in favor of Donald Trump, a finding supported by substantial evidence and multiple independent investigations. The ongoing dispute highlights the persistent political ramifications of the 2016 election and the enduring debate surrounding Russian interference. That's all for now. Subscribe to InfoStream for your next update.